Welcome to Day 85 on the Trail. We have 5 readings for today. From Acts 28, verses 11 through 31, Leviticus 21, Proverbs 19, verse 1 through 20, verse 30, the 83rd Psalm, and Tobit chapter 8, verse 19 through 9, verse 6. As we close our reading of the book of Acts, we see a shift from Paul the prisoner to Paul the missionary being welcomed by the local Roman Christians. During his 2-year imprisonment in Rome, Paul was allowed to remain in a house instead of a prison. It should also be noted that Paul did not bring the gospel to Rome himself. As we see here in Acts, the church was already present in Rome. Now, as Acts concludes, we find a final discussion with the Jews in Rome. As we have seen elsewhere in Acts, the Christian message is met with a mixed reaction. In response, Paul speaks to their stubbornness and resistance to the message of Jesus and quotes from Isaiah chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. While this may seem like he was closing the door to his mission to the Jewish people, in the other 2 instances where Paul says something similar, in Acts 13 and 18, he continues to share the message of the gospel with the Jews. Also, we see in verse 30 that Paul welcomes all who came to him. On day 86, we will begin reading the first of Paul's 13 letters contained in the New Testament. Therefore, I wanted to include a few brief summaries of Paul's teaching. The first, and perhaps the most important of these summaries, is known as the Pauline Circle. Now, the Pauline Circle, while not complete or all-encompassing, it does help us see Paul's understanding of the overarching relationship between what we do and what God does for us. For Paul, the saving acts of God, God's very relationship with us, is initiated by God. By His grace, God comes to us. As we will see in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 5, Paul says that we were dead in our trespasses. If we were dead to God, there is nothing we could possibly do to help our situation. God has to come to us. That is grace. And that is where we start. We then respond to God's grace in faith and by faith. We trust in the promises of Jesus and what He has done for us. To follow Jesus, we have to have faith in Him. We have to trust Him. The third part of the circle is how we express our faith. We respond to God in love, and we love our neighbors. We perform works of love in the heart of the world, because God first loved us. Then, the more we walk with Jesus and follow the path of discipleship, we learn more about Him, and we find more grace along our journey with Him. So the Pauline Circle always works in a clockwise direction, as shown here. Our journey with God always begins with grace. It only works in one direction. Grace leads to faith, and faith is expressed in works of love. However, if we attempt to reverse the circle, if we try to run in the opposite direction, we begin to think that if we do the right things, then we show our faith, then God will be gracious to us. When we reverse the circle, when we begin with us and not with God, is where the real danger is found and where boasting is born. We begin to believe that our actions lead to our salvation, that what we do can somehow earn us favor with God. And then we begin to forget about how we were shown grace. We start to see others differently and even negatively. We begin to look at them without the grace that was shown to us. And soon, they become outsiders or competitors and even threats. Paul was adamant against this line of thinking. It was critical to Paul that we never forget that everything begins with God's grace. By grace, we have been saved through faith. This is where our story starts, and this is where our story ends. Now, we need to have the courage to live like it in between. In Proverbs chapter 20, verse 4, we find, "The lazy person does not plow in season. Harvest comes, and there is nothing to be found." Now, even if you've never set foot on a farm, I doubt this is new information. You can't expect a harvest if you have never planted seeds. No matter how much you complain, or how unfair and corrupt you think the system is, corn does not grow on good intentions, or because you want it to. That's simply farming 101. No matter how much you demand or stomp your feet, if you don't spend time in the field working hard, you shouldn't expect a reward for your lack of responsibility. That's life 101. Apparently, the author of Proverbs thought this community needed this reminder, and those readers thought their kids needed the reminder, and so on. So over the generations, they passed along this bit of wisdom, all the way down to us. For generations, we have forgotten repeatedly that God has ordered our world in such a way that if you want to gain a benefit from something, then you have to put in the effort. But here's the best part. When it comes to the harvest, God has designed the return on investment to be beyond extraordinary. Let's say you decide to plant an ordinary seed of corn. You water it, you care for it, you protect it from being trampled by the ghosts of baseball players, and so on. What return would you expect? 25%? 50%? Maybe to double your investment? Not at all. From that solitary seed, we can expect a stalk of corn holding 1 to 2 ears of corn, each ear producing 600 to 800 kernels, neatly organized into 16 edible rows. So, from the single kernel you planted, you can reap a harvest of 600 to 1600 new kernels. And in case you haven't counted, there are about 170 kernels of corn in a typical bag of microwave popcorn. So your single kernel could earn you 3 to 9 bags of delicious microwave popcorn for you and your friends to enjoy while watching Field of Dreams. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.